Welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast with former Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring of Goldring Financial Leadership. In this podcast, we provide successful business owners, including doctors and dentists, with insights to minimize tax and risk while maximizing retirement income and future legacy. Join us for this journey as Rick draws from years of experience and guest experts, including successful entrepreneurs, to provide unique strategies and approaches to estate and financial planning matters, as well as business in general. Now, on to the show.
So my guest today on the Mayor of Money podcast is Deep Bajwa, the country director for Best Doctors Global Medical Care Insurance. So Deep, welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast. I'm looking forward to our discussion because we're going to be talking about a particular product that your company offers that many people haven't heard of. So we look forward to the discussion. So when did Best Doctors Insurance come to Canada, and what is it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you very much for having me, Rick. It's a pleasure, first and foremost. And I'd like to answer that question by separating Best Doctors from the insurance. Best Doctors has been around in Canada for 30 plus years. The insurance operation, the insurance product or a version of it has been in Canada for 15 plus years. Today, Best Doctors, the second opinion that was widely known, has been acquired by Teladoc. And we're the only Best Doctors left in the Canadian landscape, and we are an insurance company. And when you ask, what is it? It purely in one sentence, it is private medical insurance. Now in Canada, people wonder, why would you need private medical insurance? But look around what's happening. A case can be made very easily by entering any version of medical news into Google for Canada to go, hey, I might want a solution that's privately funded in my pocket because the public system, as great as it might be, might not deliver on the needs of myself and my family.
So I like to characterize the Canadian healthcare system as being pretty good, like pretty good roadhouse food. But there's certainly better roadhouse than roadhouse food, and there's a whole range of sort of spectrum when it comes to dining. If I use that analogy, especially in the States, everything from very rudimentary care all the way to very expensive and very significant care. With Best Doctors Global Medical Care Insurance, you're saying it gives people the option. They have a solution in their back pocket. So I think of what's going on today in Canada. We already had waiting lists for knee surgery, hips, eyes, whatever, and waiting lists for certain diagnostic tests for MRIs. I think every one of us has heard of people having to wait for a procedure, an operation, or for a diagnostic test. So if I've been diagnosed or potentially want to be diagnosed or need a diagnostic test, I guess I should say, and it's going to be, 6 weeks, 7 weeks for that test. What options do I have if I'm covered by this particular form of insurance?
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is a reality. If somebody wants an MRI or a CT scan in Canada, it's not uncommon for you to wait 4 or 5 months for a scan like that. That's very normal. Now, we deliver the same solution to all of our members across Canada within 72 hours. How we do it, you're going to need another podcast for that. But what we do is we have partnered with a third-party provider that has access to these machines because, I mean, you and I both know you don't just get to turn the machine off. They're on all the time, right? So if you need a scan or anything, we deliver the entire solution within 72 hours. And what that means is going in for the scan, getting the results back, the complete patient care cycle, everything within 72 hours. That is vastly different than waiting a month or 2 or 3 or 4 for just going in for your scan.
So, and if you have insurance through Best Doctors for global medical care insurance, that process, that diagnostic test, whatever it is that takes place within 72 hours is covered by the insurance.
Yeah, it's completely paid for. The member, the patient, the person who owns the insurance policy, however you want to call it, they don't pay anything out of pocket. They don't pay a deductible. They don't pay, the one-time fee. There's nothing of that sort. They pay their annual premium. That's it. But if they ever need a scan for themselves, for their significant other, for their kids, whatever that looks like, it's a family solution. And they just get to go.
And you get to a certain age, and I hope I don't need a new knee or need a new hip. I know friends that have needed a new knee and needed a new hip, and often had to wait for months, if not almost a year, for a new knee or a new hip. And again, I'll ask you the question. So if you're in that particular situation, you're in the lineup, in the queue in Canada and Ontario, they get a new knee. Do you have an option of saying, I don't want to wait in the queue, I want to go somewhere else, or it can be done sooner?
Yeah. Great question. I think from a volume perspective, we do a lot of orthopedic surgeries. And the reason is, you mentioned you have to wait a year for a new knee or a hip. That was the reality before COVID. Today, you wait 26, 28, 32 months, and that's like normally accepted. So the reality on the ground is not so pleasant. So if you do need a new knee, and your family physician says, yeah, you know what, it's going to take you 28 months to get a new knee. If you were a member in our with our product, you would be able to have a scheduled appointment with a clinic internationally, anywhere. 99% of our claims go to the United States, but you would be able to get that appointment within 3 weeks.
But if you don't want to go to the States, if there's other options in other countries, can you go to other countries?
Yeah, definitely. Let's say you're traveling and you're in Mexico and you're trying to get away from the lockdown or whatever, and you break a leg. Yeah, we will pay for it. Like, we will help you get better. We would pay for the surgery. We would pay for everything. But that 3-week window that I mentioned, it is dependent on where you want to go. If you want to go to Mayo Clinic in Arizona in January because Toronto is freezing and it's minus 30 outside today, then you might have to wait more than 3 weeks because everybody's trying to go there. But if you're okay going to Rochester, New York, then yeah, you could probably go in 2 weeks.
Amazing. So you have medical care coverage, global medical care coverage that gives you a choice of where you want to have treatment. And is this, and so we've talked about orthopedic situations and a new knee and new hip. We talk about diagnostic tests. So what about cancer? What about heart arrhythmias? Because I do know from personal experience, there are specialists around the world in certain heart arrhythmias and heart arrhythmias, and who specialize in the arrhythmia and specializing in the procedure to fix the arrhythmia. Can heart and cancer be covered by this particular plan?
It is covered, and it's covered 100%. It is covered 100%, because having a private medical insurance product that's not going to cover you 100% almost makes it seem like, why would you have it? Because you're already trying to do something different, so you need the coverage to be 100%. So the way we set it up is, once the client pays their deductible, it could be $250 or $500 or $5,000, whatever they choose. Once they pay the deductible, we will pay the entire invoice after the fact. That invoice for cancer, for example, can easily be $500,000-$600,000 USD, and that's what we pay on average. Now, that is dependent on where you go for treatment. You could go to MD Anderson, or you could go to Johns Hopkins. Depending on where you go, there's going to be a usual and customary rate, and we would pay that invoice. So to answer your question short, yes, cancer is covered. Yes, heart conditions are covered. Ortho, cardiac, all of that stuff is covered.
So if you have a claim for cancer of $500,000 in a year, and I understand that the maximum benefit, depending on the plan and age of the person who's insured, could be up to $5 million.
Yeah.
So that $500,000, if it's incurred in 1 year, is that go against your $5 million for 1 year, or is that a $5 million sort of lifetime maximum?
That $5 million, depending on how you set up the plan, right? Are you setting it up for a corporation? Are you buying it personally? If you buy it personally, you almost get like a $5 million line of credit, if I can explain it that way. You just draw down. So 1 year, you get a $500,000 claim. Now you have $4.5 million. A couple of years in, you get $1 million claim. And believe me, I've seen claims over $1 million. Then you get a then you're left with 3.5 million. And you just draw it down to zero. I'm assuming nobody would ever get to zero because quality of life after a couple of $1 million of medical procedures is not going to be the same, unfortunately. But on the corporate side, if you've purchased it for yourself and your key individuals and you've sort of set up a structure, then that benefit renews every year. So if you've chosen a $2 million benefit and 1 year you have a $500,000 claim, next year your 2 million is almost replenished. It looks and functions like group insurance.
Wow. So there's another feature that's unique to the plan that we haven't discussed yet, and that's the annual health assessment.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. I came on board with this firm in January of 18. I had been talking to them since Q2 of 17, and I studied what they had, and I quickly realized there's a big component missing. Is there are about 40 private clinics in Canada. They have more than 10 products on their shelf, but their flagship product is an annual health assessment. Depending on where you are in Canada, that annual health assessment costs anywhere from $2,500 all the way to $4,500. And all it is it's a 6-hour head-to-toe assessment. Their entire business model runs on preventative health and wellness. So they'll tell you exactly how healthy or unhealthy you are. But because of the red tape and the Canadian legislation and how our healthcare system is set up, that's really all they get to do. They get to do a thorough investigation of your health, identify a problem, and then their work stops because legally they cannot do more. So they go, hey, Deep, yeah, you do have cancer. We identified it before anybody else could. Congratulations. But then they send you back home. And now when Deep goes back home, he ends up in that loop of, hey, if a hip surgery wait is 28 months, how long is the cancer wait? Oh my goodness, I have to wait 8 months to see a radiation specialist. So we incorporated that health assessment, which I just described, with our insurance. So almost like a perfect marriage. So today you go to a private clinic for a health assessment, they identify a problem. And if you have our product, you get to act on the solution the same day, if not the same week, for example.
Wow. And that's part of it. Is that so? So you have the coverage, you pay for the coverage, and you're going to get the majority of the cost of your annual medical assessment paid for.
All of it, all of the cost. If I can explain it one way, we'll just take and I genuinely dislike talking numbers because they're all dependent on age and sex and so on. But let's aim for like a 55-year-old male or a 60-year-old male. Your annual premiums could be in the area of $3,000 to $4,000, roughly. Right? If you set it up with a higher deductible, you could look at $2,500 annual premium. If you go to a private clinic in Toronto, depending on which one you go to, there's Cleveland Clinic, MedCan, there's TELUS Health clinics. Their average cost of the health assessment is $3,500 for the year. And our premiums are $3,500 for the year. So as a consumer, you get to choose. Do I want to go to the clinic and get a health assessment and go back home and twiddle my thumbs? Or do I want an insurance solution where I still get to go to the clinic, but now I have the option to act on the advice that I might receive in the event it is an unfortunate conversation?
In reading about your particular offering, it was stated that 5 to 10% of the time when people go for the annual health assessment, there is some underlying medical condition discovered that the client or the patient didn't know about before.
That's the second statistic. The first statistic is close to 30% of the time, the annual health assessment identifies a problem which was missed by the family physician.
Okay.
30%. Out of those assessments, 10% of the time, it is life-threatening.
Okay.
So depending on how you slice the numbers, if you go in for a health assessment, you're almost always better off. Because their entire business model functions on preventative health and wellness. They have created a well-oiled machine which brings you back every year, and they sort of project your life 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 30 years into the future and say, hey, Deep, if you keep doing what you're doing now, then this is what your life is going to look like in the future. And part of that process is identifying health risks based on family history, lifestyle, and so on. So they do a really good job of identifying things that, I mean, you and I both know, if you have a family physician, which is unfortunately assigned to you based on the postal code you live in, because you're not going to drive 2 hours for a family physician because they happen to be a good one. So the Canadian healthcare system is subject to your postal code, is how I explain it. That 10-minute annual physical is not comparable to a 6-hour annual physical. So that's why these clinics identify problems 1/3 of the times that are missed in the public system. And sometimes those problems that they identify are life-threatening.
So assuming you have one of these annual health assessments and a health challenge is pointed out to you, and so I guess the question is, well, I guess you're going to call your family doctor, and then, which could take, family doctors are usually pretty good. You can see them within a couple of weeks, but then you're going to get a referral for a specialist. And depending on who the specialist is and where it is in Canada, that can take, well, whatever length of time
Exactly.
it could take. So when faced with that, okay, I can go to my family doctor and try to get in the queue, or what's the process? Like, what happens if I'm covered by Best Doctors Global Medical Care Insurance? I've come out of Cleveland Clinic or MedTank Clinic. There's an issue. What do I do as relating to the plan? Like, what actions do I take?
Yeah, so our plan offers more than just the money on the table to go get treated. We actually provide medical services that make it easy for the client to use the money. One of the things we provide is, if you want to figure out which doctor to go to, because you might not know, right? One of these clinics will say, hey, yeah, you need to address problem 1, 2, and 3. But as a client, you don't know where to go. If the entire world is available to you and money isn't the problem, where do you go? So you can tap into a service to find out who is the best doctor who might deal with that. As soon as you have that information, which could take 24 to 48 hours, as soon as you have that information, you can give that information to our team, and we will book your appointments to go there. Now, I'll visit my comments earlier, trying to go to a Mayo Clinic in Arizona in January. That could take a month, right? Which is still way better than what you would be subject to if you did not have this option. So to answer your question, what can you do? You can actually act on the advice, and within 7 business days, you will have a very clear understanding of when your initial consult appointment is, when your surgery date is, depending on what the medical issue is, what your next steps are. We help you paint the picture so you know what's going to happen in the future.
So with regard to the plan, it's offered on an individual basis as well as a group basis, minimum of 5 people for the group.
On the group side, yes.
On the group side. So let's talk about the individual plan for a moment. So, the person's married and they may have some children. Can a spouse or children be covered under the plan?
Yeah, definitely. It can be yourself, your spouse, your kids. It can be set up as an entire family, for sure.
And kids are a certain age. You can only cover them up until a certain age, I assume.
Same thing with other plans. I mean, if you're a student, you're okay. As soon as you're not a student, then you're not, right?
Yep.
And it's and we want to make sure we cover everybody, because the conversation will be a little funny, right? Hey, honey, sorry, I have private insurance that lets me go to a private clinic, but you don't get to have one.
Right, absolutely. So, assuming the premiums are going to be, less for a 25-year-old and more for a 65-year-old, at what, like in the older ages, do the premiums go up? Or the premiums are guaranteed for 1 year, I assume?
The premiums are age banded every 5 years.
They're age banded every 5 years. Okay.
So every 5 years, the premiums will increase. I mean, it's medical insurance, right? So there's no guaranteed rates. But we have a premium table where every 5 years you pay a little bit more, and then you pay that amount for the next 5 years, and then you pay a little bit more.
So you get it at 50, 55, and you have stability of premiums for 5 years. And then it's going to go up. But at some point, I mean, we know that the older you get, the more healthcare you're going to need. Is there an age where you can no longer qualify for the coverage?
Yes, you have to purchase the product before the age of 70,
Okay.
the personal product. But once you have it, you can hold on to it forever. So we have clients that are 75, 78 years old. They use the product, they have the product, and I doubt they'll ever cancel the product. They've been paying for it for 10 plus years.
So that's interesting. So if you get it prior to the age of 70, you can keep it for the rest of your life. Now, what about health underwriting? Are there medical questions in order to qualify for this form of insurance?
Yeah, so we don't do blood work or urine analysis or anything of that sort. So in this COVID environment, people feel a little ease that they can apply for it and they can get it without any version of intrusive underwriting. We do ask medical questions, and depending on the answers of those medical questions, we will ask for APS statements. So that's the extent of our underwriting. Now, if your family physician gives us the APS within a couple of days, it's quick. If they take a couple of weeks, it takes a little longer.
Right. And depending, so if the physician identifies a particular health issue, is the person completely disqualified from getting coverage, or is the coverage more limited?
Yeah, we will offer coverage with an exclusion in that scenario. I mean, the two realities of insurance is you can either get an exclusion or get a rating.
Right.
You're more likely to get an exclusion than a rating.
And that exclusion, does it last forever or for a period of time?
It depends on what the medical condition is.
Okay.
A lot of times we can revisit it in 24 months, given everything is stable. However, depending on because health is so different, right? Like, this is not a personal health or a CI type of, there's a chart that you follow to figure out what you have. Everybody's body is different. So it really varies.
So let's talk about the group insurance plan. So that's a minimum of 5 people. What's the major advantage of the group insurance plan as opposed to the individual plan?
Yeah, the group insurance, we do a ton more group insurance, and the reason is it's an automatic issue at 5 lives. So 5 people, as long as there's no anti-selection, and what I mean by that is if you put one vice president on, you don't put the other vice president on. As long as there's no funny business like that, 5 people, it's an automatic issue. And for the first 2 years, we pay for all new claims. And starting month 25, so starting year 3, we will pay for all pre-existing conditions too. So we're the only ones that sort of launched this with a vision that we understand everybody's not healthy. We understand that you're not going to be a 55, 60-year-old with no health issues. We're okay accepting the risk, but after waiting for 2 years. But during those 2 years, we'll pay for anything new that comes up. So it's a huge advantage on the group side.
Well, no, that's unique. And you mean with regard to being upfront and fair about it? You mentioned the example of the vice president. So if you've got 5 vice presidents in your company, you can't just pick 1 or 2 to be covered. You've got to pick them all.
Yeah. You got to pick them all, right? Because we don't want to run into issues 2 or 3 years down the road. We figure out that there was some anti-selection for 2 vice presidents because they're super healthy and they're marathon runners or whatever, and they believe they don't need insurance. But the other 3 were not so healthy, so we're buying insurance for the 3.
Right. Got it. Well, Deep, this has been very interesting. I mean, I've known about the product. I've used the product for clients of mine, but I've learned even more talking to you today. So great discussion. Thank you very much. And if anybody wants to have any more information about Best Doctors Global Medical Care Insurance, you can certainly contact me, as well as you can contact Best Doctors directly in Toronto. So Deep, thanks again. Really appreciate your time and really appreciate your perspective and the depth you described the product in. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you very much for your time today.
And thanks everybody for tuning in to this version of the Mayor of Money podcast. So remember, we're still in a pandemic. We want to stay safe and we want to be positive and test negative. All the best. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to the Mayor of Money podcast. click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. If you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with Rick or have an idea for a particular guest or topic, contact him at rick@rickgoldring.com. See you next time on the Mayor of Money podcast.